Hey, everybody. It's Jeremy from jeremy.net. I am a comic book artist, writer, creator, and self publisher. I share my creative process here with you online. If you enjoy these live streams, like to get additional bonus live streams twice a month, you can become a Patreon subscriber for as little as $2 a month. Head on over to patreon.com/Jeremy. It's patreon.com/GERIMI. If you'd like to get a free digital sketchbook, work in progress animated GIFs, blog posts about what I'm reading, what I'm watching, what's inspiring me creatively, you can sign up for my free newsletter at substack.com/@Jeremy. And if you'd like to purchase physical copies of my comic books, or if you read digitally on Kindle, you can go to amazon.jeremy.net. They'll forward you to my Amazon author page. And today, we welcome back comic creator Gary Hodges. Welcome, Gary. You can find him at Gary Hodges, DvsM on YouTube. And you can also find his book, Dinosaurs Vs Marsbots, at etsy.com/shop/Dinosaurs Vs Marsbots. How you doing, Gary?
I am doing great. Thanks for having me back. It's been too long. It's always good to talk to you.
Yes, it is. And and I'll tell you, I watched the Artcasters episode you did. First off, obviously I love those guys anyway, but also I know they ask great questions. I wanted to make sure that I wasn't going to just repeat a lot of what they were going to ask, because I know that we all like to dive into similar topics.
Similar, but also I do think that your guys' audience don't perfectly overlap. So I'm excited. I'm always very grateful for the opportunity to talk to you or the audience you've cultivated here.
Well, great. That's a good place to start. So for those who are not familiar with Dinosaurs Vs Marsbots, would you mind giving us sort of an overview of what this series is about, and then what this latest issue, DvsM 2001, The Soldier, what this particular chapter is about?
Yes, absolutely. So yes, if you're unfamiliar, here's the little thing. Scott Cirkland of Cirkworks Art Labs told me once that I've gotten so much mileage out of it. I really owe him a royalty. But he said if Quentin Tarantino did an X-Files, it would probably unfold something like this. That's a good starting point to trying to figure out what DvsM is. DvsM is the collected eyewitness accounts of a highly classified war that took place between the mid-70s and the early 2000s. It's a planned 6-issue series. This is the 4th one, DvsM 2001. Each one is a mostly standalone story. I say mostly in that you can read them in any order. You can cafeteria style the series. I have a preferred order, and I think you'll get more out of it if you read them all or read them in a certain order, but you can absolutely just pick one that sounds interesting to you, and you'll get a complete story. Each one focuses on a specific person's firsthand experience of this sci-fi horror war that took place. There's stories about men in black. There's stories about scientists. There's stories about innocent bystanders. Now there's a story about soldiers. The premise is very campy. There's aliens, there's dinosaurs, there's all these weird things happening, but the narratives themselves are not. And what I've been trying to emphasize with people now is that it is a series for mature readers, not just in the sense that it can be sometimes violent or sometimes vulgar, but I don't talk down to readers. I don't write down to readers. I try to give you a story with real meat on its bones. And I think you're going to have a satisfying experience with any of them or all of them. So.
Okay, great. No, that I can definitely agree that it's an extremely satisfying experience. And it I remain envious of your writing craft. The art is great, but I think that sometimes writing is where indie comics can fall down. And I would put this toe-to-toe with not just any Marvel or DC book, but I mean, there's tons of great image books, Fantagraphic books, books that treat comics as literature.
Yes.
And the writing quality is literary quality in a science fiction genre that is, it's dramatic, it's violent, in some places horrific. A great series. Let's see. I see TC Mech 79 says so you wrote like Marvel
wrote the Nom. You know what? That's actually that Nom series.
Mm-hmm.
That was an early inspiration for me. I mean, I of course encountered it when I was a kid, long before I had any hopes or dreams of making comics. But it absolutely was an inspiration of like, oh, and this is not a dig or a slam on, I love Spider-Man, I love X-Men, I love the Hulk, all that stuff. But reading the Nom and reading like different European comics when I was a kid, it made me realize like, oh, you can actually have, I think what you're saying is like, this is almost literature. Like this really is taking it seriously. It's in a comic format, a more childish format, but the material is not. So
I mean, yeah, it was being written by a Vietnam vet. And the fact that, I mean, a lot of soldiers, were familiar with Will Eisner's work doing comics for the PX.
Yes.
And even I want to say that it was Wally Wood and his comic canon that ran in military newspapers, that you can tell these great pulpy but dramatic stories about war and soldiers and combat. The Nom, I think, I learned it this way. I came to it as an adult only because I remember it being on the stands as a kid. But I think the closest I got to it was, I think maybe there was a crossover issue where they had the Punisher in the Nom.
Yeah.
And
jumping the shark a little bit, but
quite a bit. Quite a bit.
Yeah. I was like, so are we going to see like Snake Eyes and Storm Shadow now? Or are we going to see like, what else are we going to get in here?
Well, to be fair, Larry Hama, definitely there were periods of those early G.I. Joes where they got into like flashbacks in Vietnam.
The Snake Eyes origins, I think it was like issues.
It was 3 issues, very close to 100. And I was surprised that they didn't save it for issue 100.
And it was like 26 to 29, something like that. It was the late 20s. That one, that's another one that I think was a big early influence on me. That series of issues where it was.
Oh, I'm thinking of the ones much later where there was a 3-issue series close to, because I think you're talking about when they showed the origin of Storm Shadow and Snake Eyes originally.
That's what I mean. Yes.
Because they had a later story that was the origin of Snake Eyes and how he got his face all scarred up. And it was right before issue 100 of the original series.
Interesting. Yeah, I do vaguely remember that one. Yeah, I was definitely thinking of like the late 20s one.
But the early one, that one very much was like the Nom in terms of tone.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Oh, and so I left. I went down a little rabbit trail.
That's what we're gonna do here. Just so you know, it's gonna be a lot of leaving breadcrumbs and coming back and be like, hey, wait, what about this other thing we're gonna circle around, we're gonna loop back, we go under the bridge and over the river.
There's no one better at it than me. So this is the latest issue. This is the 4th of the 6-issue series. The basic premise is 2 animals that were being used in the war effort. Animals have gotten away into the White Mountains of eastern Arizona. They've been just loose up there and kind of ignored because it's so remote. But now they're noticing that hunters and campers and things are starting to go missing, presumably dinner to these animals that are wandering around in the woods. So a team of basically kind of a Black Ops SEAL Team 6 has been sent under the guise of being elk hunters into the woods to track down these animals, kill them, and dispose of the remains. And this is the account of one of these soldiers that was on this mission. So,
well, yeah, that's definitely. I mean, that's the setup alone is rife with tension, and I think that you executed incredibly well.
Oh, thank you.
Going back to the quality of the writing.
Yes,
I want to use this as a starting point. I want to use something that I heard you specifically mention on your discussion with the Artcasters, which is the Man-Eaters of Savo.
Yes.
So and for the audience, just so you know, I see the comments there, and we may bring some into the conversation. But Gary and I both love to ramble, So we're gonna, I mean, definitely leave comments and leave questions if you have questions. But this is gonna be as interactive as the usual episodes because Gary and I get into it. So I'm just letting you guys all know.
But I'm on a mission to get back to any comments like that I can. But all the way, I'm loving the shout outs for the nom. You know, I don't feel like I meet people too often who are familiar with that comic. You know, so it's very exciting to me. But
well, I mean, most of the people that I know, they like, for instance, I came to it when I started getting more into Michael Golden, and I didn't realize that he had done the first 12 issues. So I went ahead and was able to find a full set, a full run on eBay.
Wow.
Read the full run.
Yeah.
Loved it as literature, but I kept only the Michael Golden issues.
Yeah.
What it did encourage me is to read more books that are biographies and autobiographies of Vietnam vets. And I wanted to read more about it, like in prose, hear more about soldiers' experiences. But the rest of the series, other than the Michael Golden ones, I was like, okay, this is what brought me to the table. But I it encouraged me to read more on the subject matter.
Yes.
But I digress.
Okay.
So, you know, first off, the inspiration, when did you first encounter that book, The Man-Eaters of Tsavo?
I think I was trying to remember this when in a conversation a couple days ago. I believe I first encountered it in the early 90s. So I would have been a late teen. I think my fuzzy recollection is a movie had come out, The Ghost and the Darkness. Starring...
Was that the Clint Eastwood one?
No, this was Val Kilmer and Michael Douglas.
Oh, yes. Okay.
Yes. And it is a fictionalized version of this story. And I was sitting with my dad watching TV and the trailer came on, and I must have remarked that looked interesting. It's like, well, I have the book about it, you know? And so I didn't realize it was a true story. He had this book. This is my copy, but he had this book, The Man-Eaters of Tsavo. And actually the account that they made the whole movie out of is just one story in this collection of stories of Patterson, the author's adventures in Africa in the late 1800s. But this was one episode where the short version is they were trying to build a railroad somewhere in East Africa, I believe. I don't remember where. Kenya. Okay, the region was Tsavo. And they had hundreds and hundreds of workers there in a camp, just in tents around this site where they were building this bridge or this rail line or whatever it was. And these two male lions that were nearby decided, like, well, this is a wonderful opportunity. Yeah. Like, oh, this is perfect. Yeah, exactly. Like, yeah, tucking the napkin in there. Yeah, like the whole... And they just started picking off the workers. And some accounts, I think, put the death toll at something like 130 or 140 people. Basically, every day, these lions would just wander up to the camp, just brazenly, and find someone and pull them out of their tent or grab them wherever they were and take them off into the grass and eat them. And it just got so bad where finally the workers all just took off. They're like, screw this, we're done.
Like, you think they would start sleeping with pickaxes at some point. They were to build a railroad.
Yeah.
Have some hammers.
I think what was also fascinating, I think you have that reaction when you read it. It's like, I don't understand. Like, how does this run so wild? And that was, I think, a big part of the magic of the idea for me is when a predator that much bigger than a man decides, like, tonight it's you. There is very little, you just don't realize, like, how unmatched you are and how cowed you can be by fear. And how, like, no one else knows what to do either. And no one else wants to get involved because, like, well, I don't want to get dragged off into the grass. And this was just happening for weeks until finally they were like, okay, this has become a problem. And they got Patterson to come out. You got to hunt down these lions. It was just an interesting true life horror story. They made that movie about it. The movie was fine. It was like a 90s kind of action movie. But it was okay. But that planted the idea of, like, oh, that's just a fun, weird historical story. when I was charting out the stories I wanted to tell in DvsM, there's 2 tiers to it. I'm thinking, well, what are the themes? What's the larger story I'm trying to tell? And then what are the smaller stories I'm going to use to tell these larger stories?
Mm-hmm.
I felt like Lions of Savo, but dinosaurs, was just a fun way to start. You know, now it goes in a completely, the premise is all different and the direction it goes is all different from the true story. But just that core concept of 2 animals that are wreaking havoc on civilians and need to be dealt with was a great starting point for what I wanted to do in my larger story.
Mm-hmm.
And once I had that in place, there was something about the idea of these 2 animals that had been part of the war effort, and the war is winding down and they're just sort of left to their own devices in the woods, and they've gone through being useful to not useful to now a problem.
Mm-hmm.
I felt like that could be allegorical of a soldier's story. And I thought, well, this is a way to make the themes mirror the bombast of a sci-fi horror story. So it's like, I'm going to tell the story about hunting these 2 animals, but I'll also draw parallels between the experience of being a soldier who's outlived his usefulness,
Mm-hmm.
the
or
soldier
needs to find new purpose, to renew,
yes.
to apply the skills that the hard fought, hard-earned skills that they have, which are more challenging to employ in civilian life.
Yes.
And I guess to have that sense of mission when your primary mission is changing.
Well, and it's a story, I think, about exile.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's the literal exile of these animals, but
Mm-hmm.
then there's the sort of socio-cultural exile of finding yourself in a place where it's hard to relate to the normies.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to relate to people who haven't had the experiences that you've had.
Mm-hmm.
And so I thought, like, there's this all is cohesive. Like, I can tell a story in here and everything I'm talking about sort of relates to the core concept. So
yeah, well, you know, this brings me to what I think is the first major digression.
Yes.
Which I am curious how, if there are other works of literature, because I definitely can see, like you said with Scott Serkland, in terms of like saying if Tarantino made a sci-fi, directed X-Files, those are film and TV references. I'm curious, and this is just going back to my admiration for your writing. If there are other books or literary works that influenced the other chapters of the series, or perhaps had a spark of inspiration, and as a secondary thing to kind of chew through as we talk about this, I'm curious what you read, if you have any time for pleasure reading. I'm curious what you read now at this point in the series versus what you would read for pleasure around the time you began or before you began, and how that has changed. And I'm asking that through the context that I do strongly agree with the idea that writers need to do 2 things, which is they need to read and they need to write. Yes. And what you choose to consume definitely informs what you write and how you write. So I'm just curious how that has evolved, because obviously your work, and it's funny because I went back, and after finishing 2001, I went back and I skimmed through the other one just kind of briefly. And in every issue, there's parts just like, God damn, the dialogue is so good. The scene structure is so good. The pacing is so good. Like,
wow.
I know it feels like I'm blowing smoke up your ass, but it's like you've created an immersive world. You've done and the point of writing is to immerse a person in a story, to make them feel like they're in a world. You've immersed them in storytelling, and you've done that so convincingly throughout the series, and it just gets deeper and deeper with each chapter. And I'm curious how your reading habits have influenced that journey.
Wow, that's an interesting, gosh. Well, in terms of things that I've read that I can tell you for sure had an influence and also to me seemed like a proof of concept. I think the one, I haven't talked about it in years, but I used to talk about it a lot because it was so important to me and I revisit it regularly. There's a European comic writer and artist, Tardy.
Jacques Tardy?
Yes.
Okay.
Who apparently, if you're in France, it's like this guy's like national hero cartoonist. Now in the US, it's sometimes like people have never heard of him. Understand, like it's a foreign comic, you know, but or foreign comic artist and writer. He has a collected series that's called "It Was the War of the Trenches."
Yes,
and
I am familiar. I have not read, but I'm familiar with it.
It's just, you know, it's a beautiful, beautiful, fascinating work. Where he is talking about war and what it does to people and the experience of it. It's talking about World War I. But he's doing it in vignettes. These absolutely disconnected soldiers' experiences. Some very inspired by real events, some purely fictionalized, because he couldn't possibly know, because the character, and this doesn't really spoil anything, some of the characters die in the end, so you know, like, well, we couldn't possibly have this account, you know, because this person didn't
no one was there to tell it.
Exactly. But these little, some of them are just like 4 pages or 12 pages or something, these little small stories about one soldier's particular experience at the front in World War I. And I found it so beautiful and so smart. And so, again, something I aspire to. Not like treating your readers like they're reading a really good novel, you know, not giving yourself a break as a creator because it's quote unquote only a comic. Like never doing that. Always saying like, no. I'm going to go all the way with this. I'm going to leave everything on the field. I feel like Tardy does that. And he's got lots and lots of things up there. All the things I've read of his, I've loved. Another thing that was a huge inspiration for me, and I read just recently when I was midway through DvsM. Actually, it was probably the last book. The title, it's right. I don't know if it's in, it's not in camera. It's René Tardy, POW. It's him illustrating his father's account of being a POW in World War II. And not only is that also just like the World War I book, very real, very gritty, exploring very, very deep universal human themes. I was fascinated in the way he told that story, where his dad is telling him these stories about being a POW. The graphic novel, therefore, is depicting his dad in the POW camp, okay? That for an added flourish or creative just whim, Tardy puts his child self hearing his dad's stories also in the camp with him. So imagine scenes of his dad in a POW camp sitting next to his child son explaining what it was like to be in the POW camp. And just the visuals of seeing this little boy sitting in a World War II POW camp with his father, and his father explaining like the things he had to do to survive and the things he saw and what it was like when the war ended. And now, you know, you're among these people who imprisoned you and you won, but these people are still out wandering around. And he's experiencing that as a child, hearing it, but you're seeing it visualized with him in those stories. I just found it so evocative and so powerful. You know,
like, I mean, it reminds me of Mouse, the way you're describing it.
Yeah, it was really, but again, it was this example. And that's why I've always looked for inspiration. And this is not, I can name you a bunch of American comics and graphic novels I've adored in my life, and mangas that I've always been fascinated with. But I feel like when I need to refill my tank for DvsM and like get back in touch with like, what is the vibe? I tend to look at European comics. There is something about European comics, and also if you really want to go down the rabbit hole, like Argentinian comics, where there is a real preoccupation with, and it sounds like such a coffee house nonsense, but the human condition and the experience of being a human being in the world and suffering the things that life will heap upon you, and how to contextualize it, how to decide to feel that and go forward. Those are the things that I think keep me like, okay, this is what I was trying to do. Like, if I ever need to go back to the source and like, what am I, where am I again with this? What is the whole thing? I tend to seek out European comics. And Tardi is a great, I encourage anyone who loves comics of any form to seek out the World War I book, seek out the POW book. If that's not your thing, he also did a series of French private eye books set in post World War II Paris, where it's just, you know, a guy in a trench coat who smokes too many cigarettes, you know,
almost kind of a proto Monsieur Spade.
It's so fun, it's so great, and it's also gritty, and it has all the best of a noir private eye story, but with this strange for an American framing of Paris in the 50s and 60s.
It's an exotic locale for someone who is a young American in the 90s. To us, it would be, this is a strange new world. Like, I know it's true, but it's so different from my experience, which to me, I mean, that's history. I mean, there's a reason why Game of Thrones was based on like the War of the Roses. It's like history can be fantasy.
Yes.
Just by the change of context is enough to make it suck. Because fantasy is about a world that feels fantastical. And there are experiences that humans have had that are so different from ours that they feel fantastical.
Yes.
You know, both for nightmarish reasons and for wonderful reasons. You can get the and I think that's the human condition right there, is that gamut.
Lions of Savo.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, that sounds like it's just completely, it sounds stranger than it sounds like it has to be fiction.
And for those, Paul, thank you, Paul.
There you go.
Mr. Paul Pate threw up the spelling in there for anyone who wants to check out Jacques Tardy. So yes, and he's on my reading list. I've been forced to move to reading mostly digital now because my library doth overflow, and I can't pick any more books into the house. Yeah. But I'll have to see if my library has any of his. There were a couple of questions from both Dylan and from Mr. Jim Lujan, which all questions from Jim Lujan have to be handled with tongs because they are semi-radioactive. We don't necessarily know what the half-life of his comments are. But he says, question for Dr. Hodges. How much wiggle room do you have with the events that are going to happen in the next two books? How dry is the concrete?
So when I set out to do this, the first book came out in 2018. I was outlining my whole 6-issue series then in like 2017 or 16. Like, I had a sense of like, and that outline is fairly broad premises. So for example, for this latest one, the soldier one, it was as simple as Lines of Savo, but with dinosaurs, you know, and I didn't flesh out any of the other details. Now at this point of this journey, for sure, the wiggle room gets less and less.
It is literally wiggle as opposed to shuffle. It is.
Yes. Yeah. Like, well, because first of all, I know where I want to end up. So that narrows you. You know, if I know where I need to land the plane, I can't completely go off the rails in the last 2 issues. But also I have to be true to everything I've established prior. So now I have 4 books that I have to stay consistent with. So it does narrow it slightly. That said, there's still lots of room to play. Like, I know the basic premise of the 5th one and the 6th one, but there's no full script. So as long as I'm hitting the big markers I need to hit to end up in the right place. The rest of it is just room to play. So, you know, so to answer Jim's question, it's narrower. There's less wiggle room, but I'm still free to tell what I think is the story to tell in whatever way I want. So.
Well, you know, it's funny because, again, in both reading this and going back and looking through the previous issues, I feel like, you know, I definitely don't, I believe in getting off the stage before you've worn out your welcome, but there is so much meat to this concept that it comes to what you feel like doing, what drives you creatively. But I could easily see you moving on to whatever your next project is, but then every few years there being a Tales of the DvsM, because there's so many little nooks and crannies, and literally you could turn the camera to what happened 1 minute before a given issue starts or 1 minute after it, and that alone is a whole nother issue.
You could. And what's been really fun about it, the thing I love most about the fact that it's funny, you can I think any creative I've ever talked to can appreciate this. It's strange and mysterious, the creative project that actually sinks its claws into you and that you end up sticking with for years and years and years. Because there's always, I think for every creative I've ever met, a pile of unfinished ideas that you were really excited about at one point, but just fizzled, or you never followed through on, or just something, if for some reason it's just never went anywhere. If someone had told me, whatever now it's been 8 years ago, that DvsM was going to be the thing I was going to work on for probably by the time it's all said and done, 11 or 12 years, that wouldn't have made any sense to me at all. But for some reason, it has stuck, and I'm endlessly passionate about it. And part of the reason, I think, is because with this premise of this kind of extreme concept, eyewitness accounts within it, you can almost tell any story you would be interested in telling. Like if I wanted to do, I've joked about this, I've half joked because I'm not being completely unserious. If I wanted to tell a Wes Anderson style romance movie, like you know, like within DvsM, I could do it.
It would be interesting, just as the exercise of doing something that you would not to take something that would not fit easily into the milieu and see how injecting that genre into the story, how it changes to conform to the world you've built.
I mean, I think of this one, and I don't know if it comes across, but when I was thinking about the tone of this one that I did, I really was I looked at a lot of Westerns. Like I thought this is the closest. I think this is sort of a Western to me, you know, and so in a way, I got to do a Western in DvsM, and in the last one, I got to do sort of a you know, that this is not the overwhelming theme of the last one, but the scientist one. I think it's a little bit like Silence of the Lambs in that it's a woman in a man's world. That's a little bit what that story is, you know? And like, so any story that kind of strikes me that I think like, oh, that would be interesting to explore. I can sit and move this around and add something here. And now it's a DvsM story. And that keeps it fresh. That keeps it very exciting creatively for me because I can do something new each outing. And as long as I serve that larger plot, any story that strikes me is something that's on the table.
Well, I'm skipping over a question that Dylan had only because another question Paul had dovetails into what we were just saying. So I'm going to come back to Dylan's in a minute. But Paul says, what are you going to work on next? He said, hey, at least I didn't ask where you get your ideas.
Where do you get your ideas from?
I do feel, given that, you know, you're roughly 2 years out from completing the series, it's even if you know clearly what you want to do.
More than that, because there's 2 issues left, and I get one out about every other year.
Okay.
So we're looking at 3 to 4 years before I'm completely done, probably. But I can tell you, I mean, I haven't written the script yet, but I can tell you the next one is each one of these has the subtitle of the POV character. So it's been the man in black, the bystander, the scientist, the soldier. The next one is the abductee. If you're going to do an alien thing, you've got to do an alien thing. And I will tell you, just because I'm going to avoid too many of the things that I'm cooking for it, but what I have talked about so far here and there obliquely on social media and stuff, it will be the only DvsM where there's a significant part of it that's off-world. So that's all. We'll just leave it at that. So the next one will be my, even though they're all sci-fi, the next one will be my
the sciest of the fiest.
The sciest of the fiest. And and hopefully a little Lovecraftian, a little John Carter of Mars, a little, like it'll go in that. It'll be my opportunity to do the pulp sci-fi novel, but in the framing of DvsM.
Okay. No, I mean, I will tell you that follows up with another later question I have, but I'm gonna hold that.
Okay.
But let me see. What was the this would be Dylan's got a meaty one here.
Yeah.
He says, I know you're a research type of guy. Did you do any research on the psychology of outcomes of soldiers being discarded by the country and having to find themselves again?
I did. Absolutely. Because I as we were talking about, I think that's a part of the lens to look at this story through, but also just the experience of being a professional soldier. And I use the qualifier professional soldier very deliberately because I find that a lot, like, for example, we were talking about the Nam, or if you talk about pop culture, like movies, Saving Private Ryan, Platoon, stuff like that. The thing that they're all excellent, unfortunately not helpful to me in what I was doing, because these aren't professional soldiers. These are draftees.
Yeah. Versus like in 300, it's like, what were you? It's like, I was a farmer. I was a grain counter. I was this, I was that. And the Spartans, like, what? It's like,
what is your profession?
They're like, we're Spartans. And it's like, like, see, when you say how many soldiers did you bring? We're all soldiers.
Yeah, we are all, that is our trade.
Yes.
Yeah. And so I needed to find stories about both fictional and nonfiction, especially professional soldiers, special forces, people who sign up for this, not because they want help with tuition, not because it's either that or go to jail, not to get out of their small town, but because this is a calling. This is something they want to do. And they do it for their career. Like it's not just a thing they did once. Like, I was in the service. No, this is their life. And that's a different kind of person. So a different kind of story. And that was the one that I wanted to tell. So I got a bunch of documentaries on, for example, Afghanistan and, places like that to read about, or to watch and read about people who have lived that life and try to start gleaning, like, well, what are the big takeaways? What are the things that you see in every one of these? Because everybody's an individual. They're all going to be different, but what are the recurring kind of things that you see in these types of people? So I did look at that. And also, yes, the effects of that life. And especially the effects of reintegration, the challenges with that. And then I was interested in things. This is, you'll see if you pick up the book, living with the effects, whether physical or emotional, like, how to, if your experience at war is not something that easily washes off, like, how does that affect your life? An
interesting parallel just occurred in my mind, because the distinction is such an important one, that the professional, because the thing is, the draftee in things like you mentioned, like Saving Private Ryan or Platoon, stuff like that,
Mhm.
the draftee is something that all people can relate to. Is
Yes.
if I'm ripped out of my life,
Yeah.
and put in the situation, how am I going to deal with?
Yeah.
Versus the person who volunteers for this as a duty, they are more mythic. You know, it's like the Greek hero who has stepped up to be the warrior to defend people and to fight battles on behalf of people.
Yeah.
That is something where it's not a situation like, oh, I can see myself in this situation. It is someone who like is coming from a place that the intent, the ethos is an elevated ethos.
Yes.
And in a way, when they get to a point where either due to the situations of the world or just out of aging, out of being a combat soldier, it's almost like civilian life is the thing that they're being drafted into.
Yes.
If they had the ability, they'd be the grizzled old man on the battlefield.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah. Which is an important point toward the end of my story. You know,
I mean, and we even in Black Hawk Down, we see that part at the end where Eric Bana is like, the guys have been through so many harrowing situations, and he's just like, I've got work to do. I want to be out there with the people that are on the front line. He's like, I'm going back out to continue to be the tip of the spear.
Yes.
It's like, you guys need to recover. You guys have been through the shit. He's like, I'm still able to fight. I'm going back out. That's a different type of soldier.
And I don't think you can tell a credible soldier story without that sense of brotherhood or tribe or whatever, however you want to describe it, being an element of it. Like that is a necessary element. I think, and I always imagine, especially the main character in this one, but I suppose it would be true of all the characters, all the soldier characters you see in this book. There's a found family aspect to it. You know, there's this like finding and making these people your brothers, as opposed to any brothers you might have actually had, or, you know, any family you might have actually had. Like, this is your new tribe. This is your new membership. And while you're absolutely right with the draftee soldier story, it's easier, I think, for the public to relate to. It's easier for people like you and me to relate to, because it's like, that's you know, the idea of being plucked out of your life and now you're doing this is something, and that's usually what they're exploring in those movies. It's this idea of like, what's going to happen to you against your will, you know, because of these experiences. But I do find the professional soldier story can also be related, and related to, and I could relate to it with that found family idea. You know, I think of our creative community. That was my entry to this. My entry was, okay, so it's sort of like a community of artists. It's sort of like artists sitting around saying like, I can't even have non-art friends anymore. Like I need to be able to talk about my work because like no one else is going to get it. To me, it's like you can easily swap now soldier for artist, and like you have the same mentality. And there's probably lots of other things like that too. People who work in food service talk like that. People who are comedians talk like that. It's like, I just can't relate to anyone who doesn't understand what I do anymore. It's like, I think this is relatable. Whatever you're doing, whether you've ever even had an interest in being a soldier, you can relate to that idea of, or, you know, especially staying away today's sort of political environment, this idea of like, you know, I only want to know people who, you know, understand. And that was my way into this, because I have not served. And I you know, I know people who have, and I can talk to them and try to be empathetic and understand their experience. But ultimately, like, I don't have the direct experience of that. This is my way to understand it, is it's like this.
Yeah, well, I mean, that again, having people that do have that experience and they're willing to come forward and share their stories. I mean, and I get that that's kind of like, you know, just having, like, for instance, there's a podcast I listen to called Cops and Writers, and the whole idea is that he has law enforcement professionals that are sharing their stories with authors so that crime fiction can be more accurate, not be the most ridiculous, from, just making this distinction between a magazine and a clip, having things where people are shooting, like for 20 rounds without reloading.
Yeah.
Ridiculous things like that. But, just getting into the paperwork, the actual legalities of serving warrants and getting warrants approved, like all these things that never show up in the mass market media because they're not sexy, but the things that really are the backbone of how things should be done, how they're plausible, and why a lot of professionals will watch a particular TV show or movie and be like, no,
I can't. Well, that's how I am. I mean, not to get into the details of my day job, but that's how I am when I watch CSI shows. It's just like, I can't. It is ridiculous. Yeah. But I mean, I think, what's encouraging to me is I haven't watched it yet, so I can't say for sure, but I understand that medical drama show, The Pit, is fantastic, but also highly accurate, like very well researched, and, and the people, the writers clearly did the work. So that can be dramatic. I think it's just on the writer to do that extra step. And that's why I especially will disengage from something like a CSI show where I can tell, like, none of this is real. That's not how it would happen. And you don't do that. It feels like this is your job. To the writer, I'm saying, this is your job, man. And if you can't come up with something dramatic and interesting, when shackled by reality, like now, granted, I'm doing a B movie premise with real people, but I try to make the human aspects. I really, with DvsM, try to make every little bit as utterly realistic and true as possible until I get to that edge where it's like, well, now I have to put the alien in, or now I have to put then it's like, okay, it's something else. But everything shy of that, I try. It's like, no, this is real.
That's what gives it the gravitas, is that if you literally take the fantastical and say, well, what happens if you inject the fantastical into the real world? This is really how it would go down.
How would people react?
Exactly. And that's the thing where it makes the fantastical more believable, because it is so surrounded by things that are grounded.
That's always been my belief, and how I've executed on this is like, if I do everything stone cold real, the fantastical stuff will hit harder and be more powerful and be more interesting and be more, like, people will get more into it and they'll accept it more. If everything else is real, then
let's see here. Paul says, Jeremy, your monologue reminds me of the character in Platoon when Charlie Sheen, is finally on the chopper going home, and he looks down and sees the soldier who's holding up his gun and howling.
It's a great scene.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't gone back and watched it in a while, but did it win the Oscar the year it came out?
I'm sure it got a bunch.
I don't know if it won,
but I'd be shocked if it didn't. Like, it was pretty good.
But on your point about anyone being able to relate to the idea of finding their tribe and needing a tribe to connect to, Dylan says we're social animals. We'll try to find friend groups in anything, which can be really sweet, which I wholehearteadly agree with. Let's see here. And Paul also says David Caruso in CSI is super realistic.
Absolutely.
All right. Yeah. Let me flip back to, because I wrote down questions as I was reading the series, and there were a couple of things that popped into my mind. Let's see here. Well, one of the things I noticed, like, in terms of your research, I was thinking that I feel like you obsess about the details.
I do. Yeah.
Because I noticed in the opening pages of the book, when the soldiers posing as elk hunters are going, stopping at a little grocery store, a little mom and pop shop, buy some supplies. I noticed that when he took out his wallet, the contents of the wallet are like the stuff that is in, like, the fake wall, like this fake crap that's in the wallet when you first buy it.
I love that you noticed that. I love that you. Those are the things. So for people, yeah, I hope you all, check it out. But yes, the premise is, so these are soldiers posing as elk hunters, and so they all have fake IDs, and they can't have anything identifying on them. So at one point he goes to pay for gas. He pulls his wallet out, opens up to pull some cash out. Again, cash. They don't have cards because again, this is all
can't be tracked.
And you can tell this is just a wallet that someone bought at a store and gave the guy, and it still has the insert like rich Corinthian leather or whatever. You can tell this is not really his wallet. And those are the things that, to me, it's when you're writing the script, it's commitment to the idea. It's like, let's really think this through. How would this have to go? So it's really taking it seriously. But then when you're drawing it, there's the full recognition that almost no one will notice this. But I'm delighted that it's in there. Like, I personally, like, those are the things. There's a couple things in all the books where it's like, this is one of my favorite things in the book. No one would understand why it would be my favorite, but that I'm so delighted that you keyed in on it, because it's following the idea all the way down, way down.
Well, it goes back to the authenticity we were talking about, because it gives you information about the fact that these are not like, a person where if you find them, you're going to find identifying, any identifying information on them. This is something where this is essentially a black op on American soil.
Right.
And if anybody finds them, there's not going to be anything connecting to them.
He somehow gets arrested or killed or something. Something happened. They get hit by a car, and now the paramedics show up and they're loading and they're going through this guy's pockets. You can't have black ops soldier based at this guy needs to be a cipher. He needs to be John Doe. So how do you do that? And so you have to, again, all the way down. Well, it's got to be cash, and probably it's a fake plate on their truck. And they, there's just all these things of how would you actually do that?
Yeah. I mean, I definitely appreciated it. And it puts you squarely in the mindset of these guys. Like, these are very much a show up on the shores and burn the boats because they're out here and they're going to complete their mission and they're not going back until it's done, which definitely plays into how things turn out for them. As the mission goes on, as things begin to go less and less upright and more sideways.
Yes.
So
yes.
But
I'm so glad you noticed that. It made it all worth it.
Yeah. Well, hey, the devil literally is in the details.
It is. It is. And I encourage, also because if you consider the genre of DvsM, one of the genres, conspiracy fiction, a feature of it is it needs to stand up to close reading and scrutiny, and there needs to be hidden little levels to it. So I feel like that attention to detail is almost a requirement in this space. But
well, this is an interesting twist, another side tangent. But in speaking of details, given that you're in Arizona,
yes,
most of the story takes place in Arizona.
Yes.
In fact, I'm not sure if there is any chapter that's taken place anywhere outside of the state.
Not so far. There's allusions in the dialogue to things happening in other places, but every DvsM story is set at least in Arizona. Yeah.
How much do you feel that Arizona in the Southwest is a character in this story, in the way that many stories talk about location as a character unto itself?
I think you can't separate it. I mean, not to wax poetically, but the desert is as important to DvsM as it is to the Bible. I mean, it is. I do, growing up here, the desert is a strange, kind of magical, kind of liminal space. And to me, it's a perfect setting for fairy tales. And I think DvsM could be thought of as a fairy tale, but it's this idea of you go out onto the frontier somewhere and have an experience, a strange transformative experience, and then you come back. You know, it's purely Campbellian. It's purely there's something about the desert, the starkness of it, the
extremes of the environment.
Yeah, and also the Arizona is remarkable. It was interesting in this one to be able to do a forest, because that is something a lot of people who've never been to Arizona don't realize. Like, there are mountains, there are forests, there's snow, there's, you know, so this one isn't the desert, but Arizona feels to me steeped in the mystical quality of the wild. Now, I'm not a woo person. I'm not saying that literally, but you know, there are strange unexplored places in Arizona. And it's always remarkable to me when I look at maps of the eastern United States, where it doesn't appear that there's any undeveloped anything anywhere. It's this crazy spider web of roads over every little, there's towns and villages and cities everywhere. Like, it's just this like mess. It looks like capillaries just of everywhere. And then you come out to the west, Arizona, Utah, New Mexico, it's just space. There's just void. You look at a map and there's just nothing, you know, and like there's these hamlets, these little areas where there's a lot of development, little towns here and there, but there's just sometimes just wide open. And that invites the sort of curiosity and the mystery of, you know, I just, as a kid, I remember going down highways on the way somewhere and knowing that, like, what would happen if we just turned north and off-roaded? Like, where would we be, you know? And we'd be nowhere. Like, there's nothing out there. And that just invites, like, what could be out there? Maybe aliens, maybe a dinosaur, maybe a ghost of a Native American, maybe you know, like, who knows? Like,
well, even when you're anywhere in the Southwest, because you know, when I did live in Southern California, there's times when you're driving out through desert areas and you see those roads. There's no mailbox, but you see a road and it just goes out.
Yes,
it's out there, and you're like, what's out? Who made a road there?
What is
and what's out there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there anything? Is there one little house? Does the road just peter out and there's nothing? Are there just cows out there? Like, what's out there? I mean, I think that, so it's not just strictly the desert, like the arid places, even though I have a special fascination for that. It is the wide open that you find. And Arizona is obviously not the only place. Like I said, the whole Southwest is like that. And if you go up north, like Montana or Wyoming, or you're gonna have the same experience. But I think it would be hard for me, because it's such an instrumental part of it, as you said, a character, to write a DvsM set in New Jersey, you know, to set in Miami. Like, I think I would have trouble, because to me it requires, and this is a recurring theme, I think, in all of them, it is somewhere away. It is somewhere.
There's a starkness.
Yes. It's a hidden place. Even if it's a top secret facility, it's a hidden place. It's not, you're not in a suburb. You're not in a big city. You're away somewhere. That's where things happen. It's, again, the fairy tale logic. Adventures happen away. You have to go. If you're on Staten Island,
there's no way. There's the corner store. You know, there's the bodega.
Yeah, the bodega. The weird
the alien bodega. I mean, they touched on that in Men in Black.
Yeah. So, no, it's Arizona. Just my experience of the Southwest is a huge part of it.
Okay, yeah, well, that was definitely the feeling I took away from it. But I thought about, I was curious in terms of you thinking about the character. Just wanted to hear you talk a little about the character of your state and how it is infused in the book.
Yeah.
You know, another thing that I noticed, and I know that this is something I know we're going to touch on. Well, I'm very likely know that we're going to touch on when we get to the abductee. Okay. But I also was looking back at reoccurring structures within the story.
Mm-hmm.
And I notice how hallucination comes up because, of course, one of the soldiers, through misadventure and mishap, has an experience with some hallucinations.
Yeah.
And you go all the way back to the very first chapter, and the fact that the gases these aliens release have the ability to induce hallucinations in humans. Yeah. And I was thinking about how, I guess it's not so much a direct question so much as hearing you opine or expound on just how hallucination is a part of the UFO experience, because this is a thing that is reoccurring through different aspects and different mechanisms.
Yes.
But it ties into the theme, particularly when we're dealing with something that's cryptozoic unto itself. And a lot of people are like, they're just hallucinating. They were high, they were stoned, they were drunk, they had a head injury, all these things that could explain away UFO phenomena.
Anything that questions your experience, your actual experience.
Yes.
Yeah, it's funny. I've been thinking about it more and more, and I think it's significant that only one of the stories doesn't have a hallucination sequence of any kind, whether it be a dream or a hallucination or a psychedelic, basically a trip. Like there's only one that doesn't, and I think if people really wanted to go deep on the whole series, I think that's significant. In a way, but I'm not going to say any more than that because I don't want to spoil the exploration of that. But I think it's like which of these things is not like the other is an important thing in DvsM. So, but I've been thinking about that a lot. There is something to me that's compelling. Or first, just as a disclaimer, I've never experimented with psychedelics, but I've always been fascinated with the concept. I'm too much of a scaredy cat, but I just always imagine, like, if I just love to read those stories, and I love to read about near-death experiences. I love to read any of these kinds of
altered consciousness.
Yes. And importantly, especially in DvsM, experiences that break you out of the narrow field of what you're allowing yourself to see and think, and show you something nakedly true. Show you something, this unadulterated, prescription grade reality that maybe you've been avoiding, maybe you've been trying to not think about, maybe it hasn't occurred to you in a literal sense yet or a spoken way yet, but it shows you something about you that may be uncomfortable. Or about you or about the world or how you think about the world. There's something, I find that to be just a fascinating way to deliver information to a character. And it is, again, fairy tale-ish in its logic. This idea of you drink from a cup and now you see something, you see something that enlightens you in a way.
That ayahuasca trip type, stripping away the ego and getting to the fundamental core of the self, like in Empire Strikes Back, seeing Darth Vader's head smashed open, seeing Luke's face underneath.
Exactly. And you know what? I wouldn't be shocked if that's where my fascination originated, because Empire Strikes Back is one of my all-time favorite movies, and that sequence in particular has always been inexplicably compelling to me. I've just always,
it's horrific in a way to barring the revelations that come at the end, and then I love how we're talking about like it's spoilers for something. Famous part of the series. Don't spoil
Empire Strikes Back.
but just,
I don't know, there might be an 11-year-old watching. You never know. So.
Yeah, that's true. No, the 11-year-old shouldn't be watching my channel.
They should.
Anyway. No, they should definitely be watching Empire though. But just the idea, and what's interesting is that I did not remember that sequence until I was an adult. Like as a kid, somehow I blocked it out. But the idea of having the monster smashed open and to reveal yourself underneath.
Reveal yourself. To me, I mean, it's the highlight of, and I'm a huge Star Wars fan. It's a highlight of the entire saga. Like, to me, if I had to pick one favorite thing about all of it, it would be that the Dagobah cave sequence. And I love this this thing that, and I think importantly, like some of the characters in this, which is why I can fully accept, it never occurred to me, but maybe that's where it comes from. The characters don't always understand what they saw. Luke doesn't understand the lesson. Like, he gets it later.
Yeah.
You know, but it's showing him something very real that he's not ready to confront, literally and figuratively, you know, and I think if you look at those sequences in these books, there is a kernel of that. There is showing you something that maybe you're not ready for, that you have been avoiding, that has not occurred to you, but this is real. Like, I'm going to give you a dose of real. And how they react, how the different characters react to that experience is instructive. I mean, I think some, without getting into the details, because that would be spoilers, but some characters get the wisdom from it. They immediately come out of it. It's like, I get it now. And other characters just merrily stomp along like Luke did, like thinking like, there was a bunch of nonsense. I don't know what that meant. And they just carry on with their lives and continue to trip over the things they've been tripping over. So I can't tell you why this is such a compelling idea for me and why it's a recurring concept in DvsM, but it is compelling and it is recurring. Well, and they're fun. They're fun to write and draw. Because also, not only is the writing fun to write on that level, the drawing allows me every time to break out of whatever style I've been in, because now this is a different reality. You know, this is a slightly heightened, this is slightly dreamlike or slightly fever dreamlike or whatever. And how am I going to express that visually?
Well, you know, I was also thinking in terms of reoccurring themes in the book that that interview and interrogation. I mean, in this, it's a journalist interviewing someone about their experience, which makes up the narrative of the soldier chapter. But then also in terms of the bystander, that again is a whole story that is told through interview, this time in restricted circumstances where their telling of their life hangs in the balance of the telling of the tale. And I wonder whether, given that all of this is in the framework of a fictional version of you being leaked documents, whether you find the interview, whether given by free will or under duress, is I mean, from my standpoint as someone who's reading it, it feels like it is a very useful framework for exposition. And I say that exposition can be very negative and can be boring. Most people feel like exposition is a dirty word, period. Whereas I simply look at it as it's a matter of conveying information. And are you conveying it in a way that is entertaining? And info dumps, I say, are bad. But I think having a story within a story is a form of exposition.
It is.
Because you're having someone delivering you information, but by making that information a story, you've extracted the framework of the negativity.
Yes, and importantly, I think it shaves off the sharp edges of exposition that people are usually objecting to. I think when people say they hate exposition, what they mean is this weird sense of, let's stop the movie or the comic and talk directly to the reader, things that are hard, like let's artlessly tell the reader what they need to know, you know, about to understand everything that's happening. I think, and this is, again, the impetus is on the writer now. If you're framing it as, this is an account, this is someone's sharing, this was their experience. You sat down with someone, it's like, tell me about that time you saw a dinosaur. And they're like, well, and they tell the story. If you can do that well enough and make that naturalistic enough, it never should, knock on wood, come off as exposition. It should come off as someone telling you about their life. which you never sit when you're sitting down and it's like, gosh, you know, if you're let's say you're sitting down with your grandpa and you didn't realize your grandpa had a brother. You never knew this, but his brother drowned when he was 11. And you're like, you never told me about this. What was the story? And he's like, oh, and he's telling you this story about it. You would never 5 minutes thing is like, woof.
Come on, get to the point. You're info dumping, Gramps. You're info dumping.
Look at this talking head panel. You know, like you would never, like you would actually, I think, find it more compelling, more riveting, because there's a personal aspect to this. If you can make it real, like I think it's more inviting and it's more natural, and it's actually, I think, how we're programmed to receive a story. Like that's my premise, is that this is the oldest form of storytelling, is someone's account, you know, is someone talking about, this is what happened to me. I had this.
That's the cave painting. The cave painting is, this is what I did this weekend.
Yes. The bears were here. And then, you know, and it was me and these two other guys with our spears, like all that's riveting. You don't sit and look at that and say like exposition, you know, I mean, it's like, oh, you tell me all about it. I've always believed, whether it's my work or anybody else's work, there are no rules. The only rule is you can do anything you want in a story as long as you pull it off. As long as you do it well, you know, there's no off-topic things. There's no bad approaches. There's no bad ways to go about it. If you can pull it off, if you can do it, you know, that's the question, is, are you good enough to do it the way you're talking about? And this again is just I think I've always been interested in autobiography, and it's a small part of my life, but I was an anthropology major, and I was very interested in like cultural anthropology and things like that, where I was just, to me, it's always fascinating to hear someone tell me about their life, their experience, get personal, tell me something real, tell me something that happened to you that changed your life. Like that's an interesting story. And I think all of DvsM is a transformational day in this person's life. You know, that's every single one of those stories is that. And if that's interesting to you too, I think DvsM will totally click with you.
Well, no, I mean, it absolutely does. And on top of that, hearing and now I'm just repeating your words back to you, but hearing the journey of the individual paints the picture of the universal, or at least the picture of the broader world. Yes. You know, and that's the thing. All of these stories, like you said, each issue, there's 4 issues, which, by the way, guys, I threw it up on the links a couple times, but if you have not read it yet, you can head on over to etsy.com/shop/Dinosaurs Vs Marsbots. There's 4 issues out.
Yes.
Each chapter can be read as a standalone science fiction /thriller/horror story.
Yes.
Together they build a tapestry, and I think that's actually one of the most challenging things. It's something that I'm struggling with my my next project, you know, in terms of trying to make things less narrative, like less of one singular narrative, just to free me up a little bit, because I do tend to the problem for me is just doing single comics. I write like a graphic novel. I write like it's one big story and just has chapter breaks. I'm trying to make things a little bit more episodic, which again, I stand in admiration and friendly envy of your craft. Like you do such an amazing job with it. Well, you know, here's something that occurred to me.
Okay.
Have you ever read any of Grant Morrison's The Invisibles?
No, I haven't.
Well, it is a Vertigo comic.
Okay.
Or it was a Vertigo comic. And
can I write this down? Is this something I would like? Is this?
Maybe.
Let
me put it this way. Okay. Do you like Grant Morrison in general?
Sure. Like I'm kind of neutral, you know? Yeah.
The reason why I say that is because Grant Morrison has high concept, all-star Superman.
Yes. I did love
Morrison.
that. Yeah.
And then at the other end of the spectrum is his somewhat more esoteric, magical stories, which are somewhat can be a little bit harder to penetrate. And I find that I always wanted to like the more magical books of his, but found like some of them got just difficult for me to understand. And I think The Invisibles is one of those books.
I'm intrigued.
And oddly enough, he broke it into three seasons, and the middle season was my favorite. And he said that he intentionally wrote the middle season as kind of like an American action series and kind of dumbed it down a little bit. So I'm like, maybe that's why it worked for my brain.
That's funny.
To be honest, my favorite work of his is a book called The Filth, which is literally about a guy who, in one word, it's one of those where sliding doors type things where he's, or more of a Jacob's Ladder type story where in half of the world he's like a normal mild-mannered paper pusher, in the other half of the world he's a guy hunting down interdimensional, invaders.
Okay.
And that one felt like it did the best job of merging the two sides.
I'm going to check these out. I'm always interested in maybe I just haven't read the right Morrison. Again, I don't dislike him. You
don't have a strong opinion either way.
Yeah,
you haven't read a ton of his work.
Yeah.
But the reason why I bring up The Invisibles is because Grant Morrison very publicly talks about magic, being a magician, manifesting things into the world, using sigils. But one of the things he's talked about is the power of the creative act as a form of magic.
Yes.
As a form of manifesting things. And one of the things that he's talked at great length about it is that he basically wrote himself into The Invisibles. The main character in The Invisibles is sort of like a James Bond if he were a very esoteric magician, but instead of being James Bond by himself, he's leading like a super group, a ragtag team. It's more like Ocean's 11 meets it's almost like Ocean's 11 meets John Constantine. That's kind of more what it is.
Okay.
But what he talked about was that he used to have hair, he shaved his head, he started dressing, he made the character dress the way that he dressed, it looked the way he looked, the relationships began to mimic him, and what he found is that things that he wrote into the story started manifesting in his life.
Interesting.
And to the point where there was a point where the main character in the book went through a very severe illness, and he started getting sicker and sicker, and it was like to the point where it almost killed him.
Wow.
And he realized that even though he was already somebody who was a practicing magician, he's like, wow, I am playing with powerful forces and they're affecting me in ways that I was not prepared for.
Interesting.
And I bring all of this up
to ask
the very woo-woo question. And I'm somebody who I haven't had, I would say, paranormal experiences, but I'm one of those people who I'm an anything's possible type person.
Okay.
Yeah. If someone comes to me with something that sounds outlandish, I'm like, well, tell me more. I'm not one to tell people that's impossible, you're making shit up, or you're crazy. I'm also not someone to tell you I'm all on board, let me show you my collection of tinfoil hats. I am neither of those. I'm just sort of
somewhere in the middle.
I believe that anything can be possible, and I do believe that reality has boundaries, and I don't know what those boundaries are.
Okay, sounds fair to me.
All of that preamble to ask,
yes, as
you have written yourself into this book, not to say like you definitely are a very practical and reason-based human being, but since starting the book, have you noticed anything unusual, things that weird parallels or weird connections that you're like, like that literally is like, this feels like literally you're at a point where like, am I in a scene in my own book? Like something usually like, this relates too closely to what I've been working on creatively. And it's one of those things where sometimes it's one of those things where you're like, am I just seeing that because I wrote this story? Or did I work this into my story because these things were already in the background and my writer brain just got to the answer before I'm experiencing it? Like, just weird, anything weird. And if the answer is just a flat, no, then it's no. But I'm curious if you've even thought about anything like that.
In a form I have. I am, this is a cliche. People have heard this before, but it's one of those cliches that is a cliche because I think there's truth in it. I do believe all art is in some way autobiographical.
Mm-hmm.
And
one thing I just wanted to say, I saw a comment asking where the link is. For anyone who's watching, there is a link in the description for the video to Gary's store. So just go on the description for this video and you can go pick it up. Continue, please.
Of course. So all art is autobiographical, I think. I think you can't even help it. I mean, I think it's a necessary thing. It's coming from you, unless you're the type, and I'm not dismissive. I have friends who believe this, that you believe inspiration is received, you know, is that you have to get yourself right and it's from the muses or the source or however you would want to phrase it. If you think ideas come from without to within, you're not going to agree with this. If you think ideas are generated within, they're like you receive the world, you do your weird funhouse mirror version of it, and that becomes your artistic expression, which is what I believe. All of it's autobiographical in some way. I mean, it's all, only you could be writing it. So that being the case, I feel it becomes a chicken and egg thing, I think. Sometimes I'm looking at my work and saying, like, this seems to echo my life in some way, some aspect of my life, which would be the art is autobiographical. And then other ways, I feel like my life, it's like, oh, this would have been predicted by my work. Like this would have, like, this is fairly, you know, and it's, you know, I'm going to be a little, forgive me for being, and I'm less to you.
Some personal things that you wouldn't discuss publicly. That's another reason to be cagey or say, I'm not going to go into certain things. I'm
going to step gingerly here because I also don't want to spoil big plot elements, but in any of the works, and give me a little length of rope here so I can work around back. Something I talk about here and there on my videos is this concept of the camouflage of genre. This was a phrase I encountered. I believe it was Francis Ford Coppola was interviewing or talking to Quentin Tarantino. And he asked Quentin Tarantino very pointedly, have you ever considered doing something not cloaked in the camouflage of genre? And I found that to be a very interesting question because it acknowledges the fact that within genre, the Western, the Kung Fu movie, the sci-fi movie, the superhero movie, whatever it is, you can tell real stories, you know, real human stories. And because they are camouflaged in genre, it can go to the audience unimpeded. Where if in fact you wanted to talk about this in a very straightforward, real, unadulterated way, the audience may say I don't want to hear about this, or I don't want to talk about this, or this is contrary to my religious or political or personal feelings, or, you know, whatever, like they'll shut it down. But if you can, you know, put the wolf in sheep's clothing and send it in there, maybe it can slip through the lines and people can get a story. And like a go-to example for me is for example, the Blade Runner movies. The Blade Runner movies, there's this concept of the empathy test, the empathy of like sorting out who is human versus not human by their reaction to emotional questions. And in a way, if you're watching these movies and you're feeling sympathetic to the replicants, like you're passing the empathy test, you know, and it's calling into question what is a human or not, you know. I could present you with two things. I could say you can watch Blade Runner, or you can watch a 2-hour lecture on what makes a human, you know, a philosophical lecture at Harvard. And a lot of people are going to prefer Blade Runner, you know, so that's, to me, camouflage of genre in action. Going back to what we're talking about here. There are themes in DvsM that I wrestle with personally, professionally. emotionally, what have you, that I want to talk about. But I recognize no one really needs or wants to hear me, just Gary Hodges, ranting about whatever I feel like is, emotionally affecting me that particular day. But if I can camouflage it with genre, if I can put it in a story, that's makes it accessible and entertaining and interesting, all the same content, but just presented a little differently. Maybe people can not only enjoy it, but get something out of it. Now, where have you seen the lines blurring? That's where I'm seeing the lines blurring all the time. I see things in my work that I realize I feel that I didn't really recognize that I felt until I saw this character talking about it. Or I'm seeing things happen in the real world that, again, I feel like this would have been the logical next step in my work. Or, there's this strange blurring of the lines. There's never a situation where it's like, oh my God, you see, the government is hiding evidence of how they've recreated dinosaurs in an endeavor to fight off an alien invasion. I've never seen that, but there are themes and ideas in it that it's like, wow, this hits close to home. And maybe that's why it's in there. Maybe that's why I didn't even realize it was in there. And I think some of the impetus, even going back to Jim's original question, with the last two books and tying this all off into a cohesive story, I've always imagined at some point, maybe after the next book, I need to go back and read my own work, not as the creator, but as like a literary analyst. And like, what is being said here by the author? What are the ideas that keep coming up that I may be totally, they're completely I'm oblivious to, completely unconsciously? I believe we all have that. I'm sure there's things in your work you've probably already noticed where it's like, if I didn't know, if this was just a comic presented to me, if I hadn't written it and I read it, I would think clearly blank is a really interesting idea to Jeremy. And maybe that never actually occurred to you.
Yeah, there's tons of things in my work where I can look at it 5 years later and be like, oh, that's why I made that. I couldn't see that I was responding to events in the moment. I couldn't see that I was responding to maybe things that I'd been through in my life maybe a decade before. But the expression at that moment was me working through stuff in the past. And then me being able to see it, I can't even see that until somewhere in the future down the line.
Later, looking at it with a little distance, there is this gap. I defy you. If you're any kind of an artist, there's this gap between what you think you're saying and what you're actually saying. And like there's overlap here and there. Like, and there's some things where like, oh yeah, that message you're trying to get in there, it's coming across. But then there's always something where it's like, I noticed, you seem to be interested in this idea, or there's this attitude there's
through lines or things implied, that we didn't see, undercurrents. And what I find more often is less like I'm able to say what I want to say accurately, but the why I'm saying it, that's the thing that I often don't understand. That's where the self-reflection and the why can very powerfully change the context.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, so I know that's kind of a sprawling answer to your question, but this is what I've been thinking about, especially a lot lately. And I think because I'm nearing that finish line, thinking about, what is this about? What does it mean? What do I want it to mean? What does it actually mean? What am I trying to do? All the questions that I think artists kind of wrestle with. But it's as you're nearing the end of a project, I think, and it's nearing the end, still a few years away, but like recognizing like this will wrap up. And this is the opportunity to kind of get it all straight in my head, for a clean transmission to the page.
That's challenging, sticking the landing. I mean,
Yeah.
well, that's the whole point. You've set up
Yeah.
the chess pieces so well that you're like, let me bring this in and pull all the threads down in a way which, actually that's an interesting thing. Like, just in terms of the format for those that are going to be going out and pick up this book, it's a thick ass comic.
Yes, they're all
Standard
pretty fat.
60 pages.
Yeah.
Did you ever consider going square bound instead of?
I did. I even looked into it, and like I went through I go to Comics Wellspring for my printing. If you're in,
they've got the calculator on the page. You can look at
like what would that be and how would that work? But what I was most interested in, I'm also, this tests the ability of Saddle Stitch. You see it like doesn't quite want to go flat.
That's the reason why I say it. I love the fact of how thick of a book it is, how thick of a comic it is.
Yeah,
but it wants to be a book.
It wants to be a book. Actually, this is the maximum number of pages you can do Saddle Stitch with Comics Wellspring, and the last few books have been that way. I did look into it, and what made me decide not to at this time was it gives you a calculator of how wide the spine will be. And as fat as this book is, the spine would be narrow enough where there's not a good way. You can't really put text. Yeah. So it wouldn't be legible. So you would just have these kind of bare white or white and red spines on your bookshelf. And it's like, you don't really know what you're looking at. My intention has been, now, please don't be me. I'm terrible. When I enjoy a comic series, I was just like, well, I'll wait for the trade. I'm horrible. I'm shame on me. But I will read a couple floppies and be like, this is great. I'm going to wait for the trade so I can get them all at once. Don't be me. But I've always planned, once all 6 are done, which again, it's going to be a few years from now, to do like a trade perfect bound, square binding edition, at that point, this will be, oh my God. I mean, we could be talking, I can't do the math right now, but it could be a 300 plus page thing. I mean, each one
would be a hardy tome. Yes.
It'll be fat. Yeah. Because each one of these is 40 to 60 pages, usually closer to 60. And there's 4 already, 2 more coming. And then there's like an introduction and like kind of addendum material. And once I finally do the trade, there'll probably be some bonus stuff just to justify. I don't want to gouge anybody. I don't want people to feel like, well, I already bought these. Like, you want to put in more stuff.
Yes. They're like, yeah, you want to put together a pleasing package.
Yeah. Where it's like, even if you've read the floppies, like, you're getting something more. That will for sure. That will probably be my first crowdfunding. That will probably be the first perfect bound. It'll be the first of all that. But again, years from now, I could get hit by a bus. Don't wait for that. Get the floppies now.
Read them as they're coming out, folks.
Yeah. Could go away.
Oh, wow. Let me see. There was another thing that I was going to, because honestly, I get so caught up in the actual conversation that I forget to keep. No, this is great. That's one of the things I was going to ask you was, in terms of the interview where we're seeing you in the comic.
Yeah.
Interviewing a soldier. It occurred to me that a random question, like, would real Gary ask the same questions that comic book Gary asked? Because oftentimes in service of the story, we need to have a character ask things in a specific way or ask certain things. And your writing style, to me, seems like you would try to make that character as authentic to yourself as you could. And I'm curious if there was ever any, not friction, but intentional, necessary deviation for the sake of narrative between, well, I wouldn't have in real life. I had to frame questions this way, or have the character ask certain questions that, or there's a whole line of questioning you would have had for this guy that the character that comic book Gary didn't even touch.
Right. Yes. So, yes and no. I feel like I want to just add a little preamble to this. So yeah, the DvsM series has always been framed as I'm being leaked classified documents about this classified war. And for comic book reason, for, you know, the premise reasons, I'm just making comic book versions of them, you know, to disseminate them. This is like this has always been the premise. And if you read the introductions of all the DvsMs, I'm always implied in there. It's always like my leaker, you know, the leaker told me this, or like I asked him this. I'm always suggested in sort of the margins. This is the first time there's a literal, like, you're seeing me in the story somehow. Not in a meaningful role. You never are going to see the artist character, how I think of him, crossing paths with a dinosaur or an alien or anything like that. Like but it's all like, this is the person who was being given information. Okay. So that's the framing of like why my character is in there. In terms of whether he behaves the way I would, I think mostly yes. Like, I tried to just like, what were the questions I would probably ask in this weird situation? There are some concessions you make in the name of expeditiousness. So, and some of it is in the framing of this story. You get the sense that it's sort of in media res. Yeah, I think it's the, you know, where I think that's the phrase, but basically you're jumping in. You can assume that we've been talking for a little bit beforehand. And that would have been stuff that I would have, the reason I chose to do it that way is because that would be completely uninteresting. Be like, hi, I'm Gary Hodges. Like, I was here to talk to you about
the chuffa, the stuff that,
like
as Elmore Leonard says, leave out the boring parts.
Exactly. It's like, let's fast forward this to the point where I think what you want in any kind of interaction between characters, where everything that's being said, you're learning something about character A, character B, or ideally both. So like, you know, this is advancing. We're always moving the ball forward with every exchange, you know, or you're getting some new little kernel where it's like, oh, okay, you know, oh, that's interesting. So generally speaking, yes, he was asking questions that I think I would ask. It just might be a little tightened up. And then you're doing just normal things. Like, it's not, and this goes without saying, it's not me. It's Gary Hodges.
Character.
Exactly. So there is, when you're writing dialogue, it's always the thought of what gets me to the next goalpost. Like what is, and even if the goalpost is just, I want the audience to see something in the Sam character, the informant character that my character is talking to. I want to reveal something of it, because that character is the heart of the story. That's the POV character. That's the subject of all this. So what kind of things do I need to say, my character, that will make him respond in a way that tells the reader something, you know? And so there is an engineering to the conversation of, I need to reveal that Sam is like this. I need to reveal that Sam feels this way about things. I need to set up something that's going to pay off later. So what is a question, a plausible question artist character would say that tees that up, you know, so Sam can do the thing that I need to get where I'm going.
Yes. Yeah. It's where the narrative engineering comes in.
Right.
Because I mean, it's just knowing how both research oriented you are and how much of a curious human being you are. I feel like if you even stripping out all of the basic, you know, how are you boring stuff, I feel like the line of questioning, like it almost like if you were to do a My Dinner with Andre and have real life Gary sitting across from Sam and just be like, I want to know about your experience. I feel like that, like a 2 hour of just the film running of that would be a completely different experience with only maybe 25-30% of it overlapping with the material that was in the interview that's in the book. And it's like, and I feel like that other conversation probably maybe didn't even have any action in it, but would still be a fascinating conversation. And I think that's a testament to, again, the verisimilitude, the reality you created, that I see. Like, I'm like, I want to hear more. I'm like, what? Like the in-between bits that are on the cutting room floor, I'm like, I feel like that'd be an interesting conversation to listen to.
It was fun to write. I can tell you, it was not fun to draw. I don't know how many times you've drawn yourself in your life, but
very few times.
I don't recommend it if you can avoid it. It is the artist's equivalent of listening to your voice on a recording, where you're like, is that what I sound like? You know, or looking at a selfie, not a selfie, but looking at an impromptu picture at a work party or something, and there you are in the background with this crazy face. You know, it's like, is that what I look like? It's if you're self-conscious at all, and I am, it's a miserable experience to draw yourself a few dozen times. But I fell in love. Again, it's always been the premise of DvsM is that I'm somewhere in the mix of this. Never as a main character. I'm just this person I'm the leaker. I'm the person disseminating. And
you're the Steven Spielberg in this particular.
I'm aspect. If Close Encounters was given to
propaganda.
Yes, propaganda was like a disinformation campaign by the government. I'm the Spielberg in the situation, and so when I first had the thought of like, well, how do I want to present this story? Like you've pointed out, sometimes it's an interview, sometimes it's just like this impression of, I was given a document and I'm just illustrating it. With this one, I thought, I just loved the idea of this is going to be a testimonial. This is going to be someone recounting something that happened to them. And when I first had the thought of, because that begs the question, well, who are they telling the story to? When I first had the thought of like, well, why not artist? Why not me? You know? Yeah. The initial reaction was like, I don't know. Like it's kind of, is that meta? I mean, it is meta, but like, is it like going, like that's steering harder into this meta thing than I have so far with DvsM. But it was immediately followed with, that's sort of a fun idea. You know, fortunately, I think in this case, my artist brain overruled whatever hangups I had about like, like, I don't know if I want to do that. My artist brain felt like, no, that sounds fun. And you don't see stuff like that very often in comics. And it adds, though it was suggested before, it literalizes a wrinkle in this whole concept that I think will, as soon as the readers might be starting to feel like, read 3 of these, I kind of get how this goes. I get it. I get
it's shaking up the formula.
Shaking up, it's like, no. I still have some tricks. You know, like I still have some surprises left. You know, like just show like, no, this is an evolving, not just an evolving story, an evolving concept. And I hope it works. I hope it plays. It'll be interesting.
It definitely does. You know, well, bringing things in to kind of a landing here, because we've been going for a while. I've got 2 questions that are very, very plot specific. I'm going to try and come at them from a way that's non-spoilery.
Okay.
And you absolutely can pass on them if you're like, I don't want to tip my hand one way or the other. Will not confirm, will not deny. Okay. So question one question is about this issue. The other question is about really from issue 1.
Okay.
But for this issue, during the interview, the soldiers are, you know, a conversation is being had between the soldiers. Oh, wait. Well, the soldier mentions that there were elements of this military program that's been developed that were being phased out around 1999.
Yes.
Now, is that because we've moved beyond that in the timeline of the story?
Yes.
Is that phasing out going to be a huge future plot point? And do we get to see what replaces the elements that were being phased out?
Okay, so again, I'm happy to answer that. I'm trying to decide if this answer even really is a spoiler. I think it's the mildest of spoilers. So I think I can answer this. So basically, I'm understanding the question, what you're alluding to is that basically the dinosaur program,
yes,
this like thing where we have re-engineered dinosaurs to use in this weird war effort with the aliens for reasons that are suggested but unclear so far. Like in the previous issue, you get a sense of like what the value of having dinosaurs in
yes.
it.
You see the bonuses, you see how there can be problems.
There can be problems. At the end of the day, it's an animal, you know, but
this whole issue this whole latest chapter is addressing
there's potential complications.
Yes.
But there's a strange utility to the dinosaurs that hasn't been fully explained yet. So that's a seed that will be explored in the last two, particularly the next one. But there's also going to you're also getting the impression from the story so far, in this story in particular, that there is this abrupt decision of like, we're killing this program, like literally and figuratively, in all the senses of the word. Like, no, we got to stop, hit the brakes on this. There will also be explorations in the next one and the last one of like why the sudden plug pull. In terms of what replaces it, nothing in particular. This is more of a hard eject, abort. And so we'll be exploring maybe why in the future issues.
Okay. No, that's a very satisfying, I mean, it answered it perfectly.
Okay.
Without spoiling anything.
Yeah, I think, yeah. I don't think it really, I mean, it's talking around something. It's something you wouldn't know without reading it, but I don't think it would affect anyone's enjoyment, you know, reading the books now. Like, it's just a basic, that's a basic premise is like, the hard break.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, and the whole impetus for asking is that I did something I hadn't normally done before, which was taking notes as I was reading.
That's great.
And whenever I came across a line that tingled inspiration, anything that tickled my imagination and made me want to know more, I'm like, ooh, I that could be juicy. I hear some juice. I want to know what's up with the juice. So that was one of the lines that jumped out at me.
Yeah.
And the last thing, again, it might be an absolute nothing and not even remotely germane to the rest of the series. But being that I love circular stories and I love callbacks, this was just something that I happened to notice when I went back and re-looked at issue 1.
Okay.
In the very first encounter we see where the man in black comes to a home and deals with an encounter.
Yes.
There's a little boy.
Yes.
Named Blake.
Yes.
Now, chapter 1 was 1975.
Yes.
By the time we get to 2001, he would already be 24 years old.
Yeah.
And I presume each chapter is going further and further into the future. Do we ever see Blake again in the series? And you can pass. You can just pass.
I'm hoping my reluctance to answer the question is answer in and of itself.
Done. That's it. Done.
Yeah.
Nothing else needs to be said. Because that's one of those things where something like what happened to that child in that first issue is a very formative experience.
Yes.
That would very much shape the trajectory of a person's entire life.
Yeah.
And it made me say,
and old enough to remember things that happened.
Yeah.
Not unlike his brother who's just an infant. Like, he would have some memory.
I forgot about the baby brother. I mean, to be honest, you could do a whole series like whatever would be the Winchester Brothers supernatural spinoff.
So here's my question. Here's my question for you. And there's no wrong answer. Again, I like to put these subtle things in there, which are relatively unimportant, but if you catch them, it's sort of satisfying. There is. I'm trying to preserve a little bit of it here. For close readers or close lookers of the art, one of the characters in this one, there's a quirk of his physical appearance that might identify him as a character in another book in DvsM. And I'll just leave it there. I'll just leave that there.
Okay. Research for the eagle-eyed readers.
Yes.
You guys can go in there, get the whole series, get the dossier with the 3 previous issues, plus the most recent one. And again, guys, go to the link in the description for the video that will take you to etsy.com/shop/Dinosaurs Vs Marsbots. And again, Gary is very active on YouTube, gives updates, regular updates on progress, and letting us into your process, much like I do, which those are great as well for everybody. YouTube.com/@Gary Hodges DvsM. So definitely follow Gary there, follow more of the progress, pick up the books. I'm telling you, I always feel like I hate giving the disclaimer, one of the best indie comics out there, because indie comics get a bad rap for not being as professional as stuff coming out from Marvel or DC or Dark Horse.
They do, yeah.
And they have a bad rap, sometimes undeserved, sometimes deserved. Sometimes those mainstream books can be not so great.
Pretty bad, yeah. No, it's a broad category, yeah. But a low bar of entry, yeah.
But I'm telling you, what I say all of that to say, DvsM is great comics, period.
Thank you.
No qualifier. It is great. Great artwork, great narrative. Gary, you're doing fantastic work. I keep it up. I'm loving this series. Thank you for coming back to talk about it. And you're welcome to come back and talk anytime, because we can go on for hours and hours.
We can and have. And anytime. And by the way, I mean, anytime you think of a topic and you would like, I'm always happy to come on. I love coming on your show. And thank you so much for all the kind words. It really means a lot to me.
Well, they are well deserved, and it's greatly appreciated. All right, guys. So on that note, like I said, I'm going to flash it one more time before I go into my stuff. But Etsy.com shop Dinosaurs Vs Marsbots, description in the video, or link in the description for the video. And as for me, you can catch me here usually every Sunday, 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. If you'd like to get additional bonus live streams twice a month, you can get them for as little as $2 a month by becoming a Patreon subscriber. It's patreon.com/Jeremy. It's patreon.com/GERIMI. To see what I'm up to when I'm not here on the stream, you can sign up for my free newsletter at substack.com/@Jeremy. And if you'd like to purchase physical copies of my comic books, or if you read digitally on Kindle, you can go to amazon.jeremy.net. They'll forward you to my Amazon author page. And again, thank you, Gary. Is there anything else on the way out that you want to say to the audience?
No, I think they've heard enough from me today. I appreciate all the people watching, either who watch live or watch on the replay. So.
Yeah, you know what I should do sometime, and we can figure out a good time to do it. But maybe we should do one where it's expressly just audience questions, because you and I will talk. We will go down the rabbit holes.
I would love that. Just general indie comic questions. I would love it.
Yeah, just fielding questions, and they don't have to be specific to your work. It could just be more about your process, your view on publishing, or just whatever. Like make it more of an AMA where I can field it and we can just. Yeah.
I'd be all about it. Because more and more, I mean, as I get farther and farther down the path, I would like to make myself useful to people who are where they're where I was 10 years ago. I would like to give back in that way.
Yeah, well, I mean, like everything that you've shared is valuable, and I think that people just seeing that a normal human being can have an idea, and put in the hard work and forge it into a creative offering to the world. I was going to say forge it into a product, but that's the thing. Your work doesn't feel like a product. Your work feels like a storyteller sharing story with humanity.
Well, I hope so. And that's the beauty, I think, and what's great about the indie comic medium is that unlike a lot of other things, you really can do it yourself.
Yeah.
You know, if you have this dream of like, oh, you know, I have an idea for a movie, it's going to involve a lot of people, or I have an idea for, you know, a novel. It's like, are you going to get it published? And who's going to actually, you know, not a lot of people are willing to sit and read a 500-page novel, but a comic is something that's accessible to people and you can do yourself. You can get your story out there. And I think that's one of the beautiful things about this art form.
Yes, I completely agree. And hell, I'm here to support that for indie creators. All right, Gary, thank you so much. For everybody else, that's it for now. Go be creative.